Someone with whom I am acquainted, whose accomplishments have impressed me, wrote to me a few minutes ago and suggested that I attempt to make another video online. There are some reasons why I didn't want to. I realize that reading habits have fallen by the wayside in our society. That essays like mine take a good deal of time and painstaking thought to review and consider against a number of psychological obstacles. And sometimes it can help to be acquainted with the personality of the person who you're being asked to understand. This didn't help me entirely in making the decision to go along with my friend's request, because it takes a good deal of time to assemble from notes an essay that can grapple with the complexities of what has happened. Additionally, I have some infirmities that inhibit my ability to present myself visually. Today I have notes that this video is preventing me from pulling together into an organized way. And of course, whenever I see a camera, I want to jump at the opportunity to make clear to my audience that a significant and deliberate injury was inflicted that confirms many of the worst fears about government tyranny. And I will not withhold from you at this opportunity a chance to see it for yourself. You see, can you see that involuntary throbbing? It's died down considerably over the years since it first surfaced. But I'm scarred in many ways. From this terrible neurological implant that was put into my brain to make me pliable as a child, to make me neuroobedient, to make it so that I couldn't resist controlling commands by brutal assailants who took me hostage and held me in morbid custody for demented and truly vile purpose. And it has scarred me, as you can see from my face, to bring to the surface memories of things that I was too young to be able to conceptualize what was happening to me. The school never reported my absences. They knew that I had reported threats to kill me. Words like torture weren't in my vocabulary. A man who locked me out of a church screaming and crying for help later went on to wreak havoc on me in my adult life as a missionary from a religious syndicate waging war on our schools because of the principles of objectivity that exist in our schools. And his faction was able to arrest me after inviting me to the law school to talk to them on trumped up charges of trespass, and then refused to look at the evidence I brought forward when passing judgment on me. I have long acquaintance with the city of Pittsburgh. I know what kind of people are here. I know what's going on. As a child, left alone about 5 or 6 years old, at the Giant Eagle over by the Kingsley Center, or where the Kingsley Center used to be, East End Presbyterian Church, and a place where an Italian man would play numbers and sell numbers from his coat. Left alone in the car as my mother went into the Giant Eagle. A man, a black man, tried to reach through the window to grab me. I was able to lock the door and roll up the window quickly enough that he didn't kidnap me, at least not that time. But he gave me a look. I know who you are. We'll meet again. I don't remember meeting him again, but I remember meeting people like him. I remember a 7-foot-tall black man whose nickname went by Sugar Bear, the name of a notorious funeral parlor nearby, who threatened to kill me if I stepped out of the house of a brutal pedophile who held me hostage. In other words, if I tried to be a fugitive from slave trafficking, a black man would kill me. The pedophile was white. What does that tell you? That tells you that this incredible situation in Pittsburgh was a 1-2 punch, a partnership between black Confederates and white Confederates. They worked together through the whole thing, and they created an alibi structure. Blacks would never do that. Therefore, it was never done. And yet, all of the evidence shows that there was no minority more gung-ho, more absolutely determined to help and push the agenda of the people who released the AIDS attack than the NAACP. There wasn't, you see. And when you look at the evidence, that's what you get to. Therefore, the media will never report the cold-blooded, hard documentation and proof and methodical evidence that shows that AIDS was a premeditated attack. That's what happened. Okay? Now, I have a lot of work I have to do, but I have been asked to show you some things. I didn't prepare for this, but I have some things on hand that I can go through that might help you to understand a few aspects of this problem. Officer Serpico, like me, a lamplighter like me, shot in the face, so to speak, had a movie made about him, in which one of the opening credits is a woman named Dee Dee. Dee Dee was the name of the girl who seduced me so these murderers could butcher me. She is the girl who the NAACP of Pittsburgh got hold of to blackmail me, to terrorize me, and to fulfill their plan. Our society has certain problems accepting the notion that we've had a problem in authority. You see, one of the ways authority gets by it is by psychiatrizing people who, think properly. And what happens when people are psychiatrized for thinking properly is that people who don't want to be psychiatrized go along and get along. So someone like me is rendered a laughingstock. Someone like me is hooted, is judged without looking at the evidence. I pointed out when I showed the script that correlated the shooting of Martin Luther King to Dee Dee's birthday, that her name was the fourth letter of the alphabet and that he was killed on April 4th. What's more is that DD is the Library of Congress classification for Nazi Germany, books about Nazi Germany. It's also considered to be a bra size, and she had considerable mammary glands. Now, Chinese TV put up an image that someone like me, who just sits around trying to figure things out, a hobbyist, he went on to Google Earth, and was looking around at stuff, and he found this image in California. He said, "What is this?" And he tried to get answers, and no one would answer him. So anyway, somehow China got the image from him. He must have asked them or something, or put it in Facebook, and they put it on a broadcast, And they said, "No, what is this in California?" Somebody from Google Earth found it. And so everybody saw this thing, okay, which turned out to be a naval barracks in California. Now, I'm not saying Donald Trump's father built this one, but he did build naval barracks. We have a problem in our society where someone who points to something like this and says the obvious, that's too much. Okay? That's too fucking much. Pardon my French. Is psychiatrized. How can you be psychiatricized for expressing your concern about that? It doesn't make any sense. And yet, most of us have to live with this sort of thing. We have to live with the feeling that if we ask questions that are too relevant, we will get hurt. I pointed out that Dee Dee's sister's name is Neva. It was a Manson-like ordeal that they dragged me through. I was kidnapped and tortured, brutally molested, and then made a laughingstock by the NAACP when I tried to get married. I mean, I was a little getting ahead of things, but it was directly related to Dee Dee's activities and the way that she set me up and the way the NAACP worked with her. So that when I was working at my school, this man who locked me out of a church when I was crying and begging for help, when I had reported a threat to kill me at the elementary school I was attending, where I was getting hit blindside by armed Huns, too afraid to go to school, biting my fingernails until they bleed to this day, hiding in the top shelf of a towel closet. This man who locked me out of a church organized with a woman who came on to me saying she loved me and wanted to get married to me for the purposes of humiliating me and triggering this terroristic neuroplasm in my facial nerve that they had implanted and knew was there and I didn't know was there. Okay? Now, they were using the girl's name who wrote the letters about Dee Dee was named Burston, which is a Hollywood name that figures prominently in The Exorcist. Okay, there's a in the cover of The Enemy Within by Bobby Kennedy, this cadaverous hand, and it's like The Enemy Within has this zombie aspect to it. And they were obviously meddling in publications already. I mean, that's just one example. And they use this idea of the enemy within to make it look like, to create a synthetic devil. And they wrote papers naming their names, planning their strategy in cold blood, and are employed by a place called Pitt. Get that one, okay? And the people who attacked me were named Pit men, like hitmen. And there's nothing suspicious about this, they say. You can't report it to anyone. There's no one who will listen to a word of it, okay? And he's in neurobehavioral research and admitted to creating the enemy within. Now, Dee Dee's sister, Neva, these people gassed me in a place called King's Estate. You have to have intellectual fabric to see what that means. King's Estate is like King's Heavenly Estate. Klaus Landsman interviewed some of these Holocaust survivors, and they were Holocaust survivors. These letters came from a kibbutz in Israel. And they explained that the ramp to the gas chambers, was called the Himmelschweg, which meant the road to heaven. King's Heavenly Estate, right? Now, Dee Dee's sister was named Neva. Their last name is Manson, which is like Manson, okay? Only C-I-N-E implies cinema. So they were planning to make a slasher movie of some sort, and the blacks weren't going to let me escape because it was our movie, And the symbol for her sister's name is Neva. Remember that. The symbol for the Neva Corporation, which is Japanese pornography, is a C and a Star of David, okay? The script refers to me again and again as C, and they gassed me in a place called King's Estate. Okay, this isn't suspicious? No, of course it's not suspicious. And you will go into detention if you insist that it is suspicious. And so there's nothing anyone can say. And when you insist on showing the evidence, people say, oh my goodness, he's getting away with, he's trying to pull something. That's what they like to say in Pittsburgh. He's trying to pull something. Well, let me give you an example of what I'm trying to pull. I looked pretty badly with, pre-cancers on my face and stuff when I washed up in Seattle. What am I trying to pull? These banshees, this organized Ku Klux Klan network in Pittsburgh, had me depicted as the driver at Kelly Elementary School one day when a creep driver swerved around school buses and could have killed a child easily. He went across the lane. They were crossing, and I was the driver. I was the furious passenger who quit the job over the incident, okay? And while they were depicting maliciously to the point where I dissociated and left the city, as the opposite of what I was. My heart was poisoned, my stomach was poisoned, I ended up with fatty liver, irritable bowel syndrome, cancers on my face from toxic overexposure, none of which should have ever been allowed to happen. Ever should it have happened. Ever. I was not the driver. I was an absolutely furious passenger. And it was a predominantly black elementary school, and the NAACP covered for these Klan drivers because of their partnership with them and the larger purpose of depicting me as some kind of schizophrenic who's dangerous to our society because they don't want people to know what really happened and what was really done to me. And you can find a number of significant elements of their claim to be reading the heart of the victims of age, Like one of these people posed, she was implicated in a slasher murder in Seattle, okay? And she posed in front of the World Trade Center. And her friends launched the World Trade Center attack. And you're not supposed to name her, okay? Isn't that something? You're not allowed to, because she has escalation dominance. I'll tell you what that means. It means that AIDS victims trust her. And when they trust somebody, you'd better not come between them and their trust, because they have escalation dominance. They are afflicted with the virus, and what they say goes. And if they want to blow up the World Trade Center, you're going to listen to them. And if they want to stab somebody to death, you're going to listen to them, because you don't want to be like one of them. You would rather sit back and say, no, 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 it's naughty to criticize the fascists who released AIDS and then began to misdirect the energies of the victims by lying to them. Who likes to do that more than anybody else is Yoko Ono. Yoko Ono was one of the most important figures in this terrible crime. There are lookalikes of Gail Burstyn, who wrote the letters, in a 1954 film of Ayn Rand's We the Living that says it would be like starting over. And she has her hands cupped over her ears because, I'm a deaf guy from the atom bomb that we dropped. This is what's going on behind all of this. I've evaluated it very closely. You have Gail Burstyn playing the violin in the name of Midori in Seattle Center. You have her standing by the pool on the cover of King Crimson's God Save the Queen. Okay, so you have all of these images that come from Reagan semiotics. Okay, and people have argued with me that it's not Reagan, but I had this image of the U.S. over a swastika outside a door that said "Rather Us," and a number of people said, "Well, you Photoshop that, you cut that, and draw attention to it," And I, by chance, stopped the film. You don't really see it when you watch the movie. It's more like a signature from The Wizard of Oz in a fade dissolve. I stopped the film between the scenes, and they were the ones that photoshopped it. As you can see, the U.S. is right over the swastika, and Reagan, with a little dark shadow under his nose, is sitting right next to the swastika under the U.S. These men invented the burning cross for the birth of a nation. They go by the symbol DG, like Diamondogallus, for D.W. Griffith, and the idea was to create a covenant between black Confederates and the old white Ku Klux Klan. There's always been a lot of that, going back and forth between the black separatists and the Ku Klux Klan. And here was their chance to work together on a sacrifice that they all could agree should go, which was the white liberal boy who was effeminate and couldn't defend himself and was a crybaby. And everybody knows that that's an object to hate and see sacrificed. Now, the art concept was based on the idea that a good black man is better than a bad white man. And of course, that's what the AIDS virus proves, so to speak, because it's this parochial concoction. And they had it all worked out to play a pussy ball game over Midori Goto. This girl who I thought wanted to marry me was actually setting me up so it would look like I was pining for the fact that Dee Dee hadn't been a virgin, and I ended up being unrequited with Gail Burstyn's partner Leslie at the time that John Lennon staged his vanishing act. And Neva has the subsidiary victory and revenge planning. And when it was all done, they did a little reverse Pearl Harbor on 911 about, who they were protecting, ha 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 ha, ha from queerbait, who was, they say, a virgin hunting vampire, because I wanted to get married. That meant I was a virgin hunting vampire. Midori had to be protected from me by the good black man, who's better than the bad white man, in the name of the Ku Klux Klan, so that our schools would respect the power of military Christianity. And you better believe they know what the enemy within is.